Welcome to our May edition here of Tidal Flooding Talk. We have your May 20th edition with Palma Shiles, and I am Joe Martucci. Dan Skeldon is not here for tonight, but it's okay. The Palma and Joe show will go on. We're looking forward to having a great half-hour conversation here. And, Palma, we are getting close to Memorial Day weekend, and I am not one to say that, oh my gosh, the year goes by so fast, because I think that's too cliche. Because I actually thought last year went by pretty slow, in my opinion. But this year, I feel like it's gone by fast. Do you feel the same?
I completely agree, especially with this last season. Feels like it didn't exist to me. Like I cannot believe that Memorial Day is already here. And I don't know, is it a little early this year? Is it like a week early? It just feels
Um, Not really. I mean, it's the 26th. I guess it's slightly early, but I wouldn't say it's like crazy early. Labor Day is going to be very early this year, though. It's September 1st is Labor Day.
well, that one I feel like is always here way too fast, but
That is true.
right.
That is true. So Memorial Day is coming. Thankfully, on the New Jersey Coastal Coalition side, not as much coastal flooding usually during the summer. However, something that we've been tracking at the Coastal Coalition is the drought that we've had for really all of New Jersey at one point in time. Now it's more of the southern part of the Jersey Shore counties. And we've really been in drought since last fall. And we're trying to dig out of it, and hopefully we do. But this actually has some implications on, or potential implications, I should say, on things like groundwater contamination and its impact on wetlands and et cetera. And I think our guest here tonight is going to be very well versed to talk with us about it. Palma, can I kick it over to you for our guest introduction?
Oh, sure. So today we have Natalie Morgan, who is a staff geologist and recently started working with environmental contamination. I'm sure you could elaborate on that, Natalie, but it's great to have you here and
You.
welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So tell us, what got you interested in the field? Because, from a meteorology perspective, it's a hard science. A lot of people have just been interested in it for decades. Were you the same way, or is this something you fell into?
I fell into it 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to Italy. My husband and I were going to go to Italy, and I was like, I'm going to learn Italian. And I started going to a community college in Pasadena. And I was like, I should probably get a degree in something. I don't have a bachelor's degree. And I was like, I took, because, you take classes when you're like 18, 19 years old. I was like, I
Yeah.
took that geology class and that was so fun. Let me take a geology class and see if I like it. And I loved it. I loved my professor, I'm still in touch with her. She's fabulous. Um, and then I just kept taking more and more classes because they were so much fun and I enjoyed them. And finally she was like, why don't you just, be a geologist? I was like, okay, sounds like a
Right.
plan.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. We'll get a little bit into the personal side of Natalie. You were a Muay Thai fighter for a long period of time. Was this during or before the geology realm of your life?
It was before. It was
Before.
before. Yeah, so I was fighting and I used that money actually to put myself through college. So
Really?
yeah, I
So
did.
I mean, I'm sure you could talk to us for a half hour about it, but like, talk to us a little bit about like where were you fighting? Like, you don't have to tell me how much money you made, but it sounds like you were making enough to make a living.
Ish. I mean, Muay Thai doesn't make good money like, bigger like MMA or anything, but
Okay.
decent enough. I fought all over the world. I fought a lot in Asia, New York, LA, San Diego, San Francisco. I even fought in Cheyenne, Wyoming once.
I've been
Um,
there.
really, it's a cool town. It was very
Cool
fun.
town, bad pizza.
Oh well, I wouldn't get pizza there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's kind of fighting all over.
Okay, right on. So, but you're not doing that anymore. Now you're doing geology is your thing now.
Yep, that's my jam now. I retired a year and a half ago, gave
Okay,
myself a 6-month window to kind of relax and figure out, okay, what's my next step? And so I just started to apply at a bunch of different places. Sorry, my cat has joined the party.
that's okay. We're an animal friendly
Okay.
podcast.
So I just started looking at a bunch of jobs, and environmental is something that I'm very passionate about. I have been for a very long time. And actually athletic career got me into environmental health, because I think personal health and environmental health go hand in hand. They
Sure.
really do. And it's, you know, I started to realize that and started to make changes that, you know, if, you know, were better for the environment. So I thought this might be a good place for me, and I really love it. And I think I made the right choice. So.
Awesome.
Now, what actually brought you to that realization? Because I haven't really heard anyone say it that way.
Um, so like, I don't know. So personal health and like just thinking about like, okay, ways that I can be healthier, like stop using single-use plastic. I don't use plastic in my house. I make my own mouthwash, like things like this. Try not to use chemicals. So I go to a refill store and use like, you know, healthy cleaners and things like that. And essentially it, you know, it does help the environment and the planet and in the long run. So yeah, I just thought that that would be something interesting to get into.
No, right on. So I'll need the mouthwash recipe later, but let's get into the meat and potatoes of this and why you're here today, and that is talking about coastal flooding and its impacts on, you know, on the environment, on, I'll say the dry land environment, not just the immediate beach, but you know, let's talk about you know, this drought that we've been in. You know, I have heard, but I've not seen, thankfully, any reports of, you know, this drought causing saltwater intrusion to get into like the Kirkwood-Cohansey Aquifer, which is, you know, a big source of drinking water. Is there anything you could tell us about this drought? And even if the answer is no, what can you tell us about New Jersey drowning in some of that salt water, maybe trying to get into our drinking water?
Right. I haven't heard anything about that, honestly. When I think of drought, I think of California drought. You know, it still rains here, but it's
Right.
right.
Not all droughts are equal. That is true.
Right. You know, this, you know, saltwater intrusion into the aquifer can contaminate the aquifer because obviously it makes it more saline and undrinkable. But I haven't heard anything about it for the Cohansey as of late. Yeah, not in the coast. If anything, I think in my personal experience, we do a lot of groundwater sampling. And we did see like drops in the actual groundwater table. So, in some instances, it actually made it difficult to sample. Some instances we actually could not sample.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was an effect I actually visibly saw from it. It actually wasn't the coast, but it was nearby. So
Got it.
yeah, yeah.
Well, how frequently do you do those samples? Like, is it a weekly thing, a monthly, or by season? And how, like, the difference that you can compare is it better when it's further apart or closer together?
So typically, in most cases, we sample quarterly. So like every 3 months. I would say they do it that way also because yeah, it is better to spread it out just a little bit. And you know, we're monitoring certain things, so we kind of want to give some time and see, okay, well, what's happened over these past 3 months? Has anything good happened? Has anything bad happened? And then we just evaluate that data. If the data is too close together, you probably won't see much difference in anything, right? Makes sense.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Let's
It made way more sense than the way I was articulating the question. So I'm
No, it's good.
impressed that you understood what I meant.
I understood. Yeah, it was perfect.
awesome. You know, we'll do what? Let's take a break here. I think it's a good time for a break. We'll take our first break. We'll come back. We have plenty more with Natalie here on Tidal Flooding Talk. And make sure you can check out new episodes of Tidal Flooding Talk every Tuesday on pretty much every social media platform. You can check it on the Coastal Coalition social, my social media account, Dan Skeldon's Facebook page, Triax57, our broadcast sponsors. Shout out to them for doing that. So anywhere where you can find some kind of social platform, we're probably there. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more. We're going to continue our conversation with Natalie Morgan here. So tell us, you know, how much of your job that you're doing is related to, you know, saltwater or coastal flooding or saltwater intrusion?
So I would say actually next week I'm going to be doing an investigation at the shore in Margate, which I'm very excited about.
Very nice. You
Yeah,
can hang out with Palma while you're there.
yeah, maybe actually we should. I'm going to be there the whole week. Yeah, so in terms of like saltwater intrusion and, increased tidal flooding, it can cause like migration of contaminants, obviously, into the actual coast, which causes so many problems. It's introducing like arsenic. If we have metals, let's say, it's going to introduce arsenic into that coast, and it can create like anoxic environments. It's going to kill a lot of, marine life, things like that. So I think it's really interesting. Like I'm doing a soil investigation and groundwater investigation because, as you know, at the shore, groundwater elevation is very, very low. So you can hit groundwater at like 3 feet. It's so, it's right there basically. So if you can have increased flooding, all these things, and it can mobilize all these contaminants. So something that we're personally doing that I think is so cool is injections. That's a way to like mitigate this, mobilization of contaminants if things like this do happen. And I think it's one of the most fascinating things we do, and I can't wait to like dive more into it with my job. But yeah, you basically, depending on what contaminants you're looking at, you have like volatile organic compounds, you have metals, there are certain things, and you inject something into the groundwater and soil, but mostly for the groundwater aquifer. And it reacts chemically with whatever contaminants you have in there, and it starts to break them apart so that they are no longer, a contaminant, essentially. I think it's really, really interesting. Yeah, I think that's something that we do, that I'm involved in, that really has to do with tidal flooding.
Now, for these investigations that you do for private property owners, why would someone need that service? Is it a requirement or is it just something to improve their property? How does that work? Why would someone be reaching out to you for that study?
So usually, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, they have a lot of very strict rules, which I'm still learning. There are so many of them. They're one of the strictest states. So for example, if someone wants to sell a property and someone wants to buy that said property, the property buyer, in order to protect themselves, needs to do some sort of like investigation into the property. Because if they purchase this property and it has all this contamination and they didn't do their due diligence to find it first, they're liable for all of that cleanup. Whereas if they do that due diligence and they find it and they still want to buy that property, that other person that they're buying that property from will be in charge of that cleanup instead. So that's protection for themselves, essentially.
Now, follow up, do you think people are usually aware of that? Or is that something that not many people would know? And do you think people often get into that situation where they buy a property and learn that there's all these contaminants in the soil?
I wonder that myself. I feel like people that are in industry and business probably know this here. But, like I think if someone isn't like a big, mogul in that industry, they probably don't know. And they probably do get, screwed sometimes.
Interesting. When it comes to, the contaminants, right? I mean, are you doing, and you might answer this, I'm sorry, you doing mostly like residential, or are you doing commercial, doing industry?
It's usually like commercial, industrial. Yeah.
Right. So like what happens like at a gas station?
There are lots of things that happen.
I mean, right, that's always like the thing, like, oh, it can't, like they're selling the gas station, nothing happened. Well, I don't want to say nothing, but it looks like nothing's changed for like a year as they're, I guess, trying to remediate the site. But like, how does this is not coastal flooding, but I'm just curious.
So yeah, usually like when you're saying like they are remediated the site and it looks like nothing happened, is that what you're asking? Sorry.
I guess, yeah, like sometimes like gas stations, like they sell and then they become not a gas station.
Yeah.
It feels like it takes forever. And I'm sure there's good reason for it.
That's probably one of the reasons. Probably one of the reasons. Yeah. I would say that might be.
Got it. Just turning it back to coastal flooding. tell us about some of the coastal aquifer, responses to the increased tidal flooding that we have seen. And I'll just say this: the Rutgers Scientific and Technical Advisory Report in 2019 attributes about 60% of the sea level rise to things like us pumping out water from the Kirkwood-Cohansey aquifer, shrinking the ground. We had glaciers in the northern part of the state. They went away. There's glacial rebound. And then, of course, from anthropogenic climate change. So just kind of relating all of that, I just want to turn it over to you.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I think that that's such an interesting thing. So basically, it's subsidence because is it over pumping, I'm assuming? Because
yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if it's over pumping, but similar. And I'm not an expert on the California Valley, but I know in the Valley the land is shrunk, has lowered by a good amount just because of the pumping. So similar situation here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, you wouldn't have mobilization of contaminants too much in that situation when you have a drought, so that's a positive.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. What about do you guys do anything with ghost forests? Are you familiar with the ghost forest that we see in the Delaware Bay shore, where the tidal flooding or the rising seas that we've seen, we get that saltwater intrusion into the soil right along especially the Delaware Bay shore, and it kills the trees, and you really see like they call it ghost forest because these trees do look white. There's no leaves on the trees; they're just white. I don't know if you come across, I know you've been doing this for a relatively brief period of time, but over time, as people you've worked with said, hey, we're seeing more of this, saltwater intrusion into places that didn't have it before.
No, but now I really want to look into that because that sounds very interesting. I've never seen a ghost forest.
Okay, yeah. Well, if you take a trip down to southern Cumberland County, I know you said you might spend a little bit of time in Vineland, but you go south, real south, you can see that. Have you seen those, Palma? Have you seen a ghost forest with your own two eyes?
To be honest with you, this is the first I've heard of it.
We got to take a Coastal Coalition field trip out to like Fortescue, Money Island, Gandy's Beach. You could, I mean, it's not like super duper prevalent, but there are acres of this ghost forest that's around. We've only seen increased amounts of this, as we've gone forward in time. Palma, I've been talking too much. I'll kick it back over to you.
No, and by the way, some of the words that you said, like, I don't think I'd be able to get that out in one sentence.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that. Some people say it's not a good thing. I don't know.
Stumble upon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can.
So Natalie, do you ever have to work with engineers to determine, say, whether pilings could be installed in a certain area, or if development is even possible somewhere because of the soils?
Yes, we do actually a lot. We have, I would say half of our staff is actually engineers. We have engineers, geologists, and environmental scientists. So yeah, that would definitely be something in their wheelhouse.
Okay. And like, what's your working relationship like with them?
I mean, it's very I don't know, symbiotic. Is that what, like, we work really well together? Like, we all work as a good
Kumbaya.
team.
Everybody's kumbaya.
Kumbaya, yeah. Yeah, really, really good. And I feel like I like working with engineers too, because I'm a geologist and my brain works in a different way than an engineer's brain, who has like, numbers and math, and they have all that stuff, whereas I'm a little bit more arm wavy in some regards. So yeah, I think we work really well together. So yeah, like in that instance, the engineer would say, oh, we have this client, we need to investigate the soils, see what they are. Are they going to be, stable enough to put, X building on top? And I would be the person that goes out and does a soil investigation and says, this is what we're looking at. And, then they all decide, hey, is this a good idea or not?
You have any cool stories?
Huh?
Yeah. No, you know what? Why don't we take a break? Because we're coming up to time. We'll take a break. We'll regroup on the other side. We'll get my question out and Palma's question out here on Tidal Flooding Talk. All right, we're continuing our conversation with Natalie Morgan here, geologist. We're going to kick it over to Palma. She has some really nice words to say about coastal flooding and what we do at the Coastal Coalition.
Right. The coalition we raise awareness for people to protect the floodplains and, of course, protect their own properties against flood. And tonight we want to share that floodplains like salt marshes and stream beds are nature's way of managing floodwaters while improving the environment. Help them do their job. Reduce your boat speed to minimize erosion. Use fertilizers sparingly to protect water quality, and limit hard surfaces in your yard so rainwater can absorb naturally. A little effort goes a long way in protecting your community, which I'm sure, Natalie, you can agree with. I mean, do you have anything to say about any of that? Like, fertilizers.
Oh, yeah, I just had this conversation with my husband. I'm like, if you're gonna go fertilizers, please get all natural. Don't get the chemicals that are gonna like leach out into the soil. I think people don't realize how important it is to, goes back to like environmental health versus personal health. Like, I think there's just no connection there with like, oh, I'm just putting this here, but it actually goes into the groundwater, it goes into the soil, and it moves. So I think that's, yeah, really important to focus on.
And does flooding contribute to that movement of fertilizers and anything else?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It can mobilize it. It can create new exposure pathways. And with increased tidal flooding, it can also change, like we make something called groundwater elevation maps. And, we make fate and transport maps of contaminants and where we think they're headed, and that can change everything. So, we make remedial action work plans that are based on specific things. So yeah, tidal flooding affects it.
So let me ask you this. So, two-part question. One, you deal with water tables, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like when you're talking about the barrier islands, right? How does the water table work in the sense that is the water table you're talking about the freshwater table? Is it the saltwater table? Is there
Freshwater.
both? Like,
Freshwater.
can you give us some? Sorry.
I would say freshwater. Yeah.
So, like,
Freshwater, yeah.
let's use Ventnor and Margate. I don't know how. Let's use somewhere you're well versed in at the Jersey Shore. What does a water table look like there?
It's very shallow. Like I said, it's right there at the surface. Most places you can see the water table. I mean, some places you can see it very shallow, but it's not so typical to see it at 3 feet as you do at the shore, because you're right, you're right on the water. But yeah, I would say it's very shallow.
But you're saying that that's freshwater at 3 feet.
Yeah, it's
So
fresh.
where's the salt water?
So there's a typical mixing zone of the salt water, and that it does come into the aquifer. That's another reason why tidal flooding can increase contamination problems, because there's a particular mixing zone, and then if tidal flooding increases, it'll just move its way inward, and that's going to move everything backwards, which also goes back to the point where I was talking about our fate and transport models. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
There is
no.
mixing, but most of it's fresh.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds, and I'm sure a lot of people listening understand this, but it's just interesting to see that you're at the beach and you can dig, what'd you say, 3 feet down, right? And you're hitting fresh water right there, even though you're surrounded by salt water around you.
Yeah.
So like that, it's almost like is it like a pocket of fresh water? Is that what you would, is that the way to say it?
I think salt water is a lot denser. It usually sits on the bottom.
So it's just, okay, good point. So it's just naturally settling down towards the surface. And then what is there a change? Like, let's say you're going from Margate Ventnor and you're going to Summers Point, or somewhere it's just inland, right? Is there a big difference in that water table, or is it not really where do you see that change? Is it like the turnpike where you lose out of the coastal plain?
Yeah, I would say inland further, much further. Yeah, but all the shore towns are going to be, fairly similar.
Okay.
The further you go inland, the more it's going to change. And it also depends there, there's the Cohansey aquifer, but there are also other little aquifers. There are perched water tables. There's so many different things that, you can get into. The geology of New Jersey's interesting. It's not something I studied California geology, so I'm also still
That's pretty interesting, I feel like.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I'm still learning, like, it's sand, clay, shale, and sandstone. And that's pretty much what you're looking at here. So, learning about when you put a groundwater well in, like test your wells. If you hit a clay layer, you can't set your well there because you have, a perched aquifer on top, and then you go below that clay layer, and then you could have another aquifer. So we have like multiple layers of aquifers.
Now, a lot of communities have set requirements and limitations for hard surfaces, for private properties, and that's to help, the ground absorb rainwater and other things.
Mhm.
Do you think in coastal communities, how important is that?
I think it's important everywhere. um, especially in coastal communities, because you are so close to the ocean, and whatever you're doing in your yard essentially can end up right there in the ocean. Everything ends up there in the end anyway, but you're so much closer. So I think it's really, really important to have permeable structures. It does get hot here too. You don't want like the heat island effect that you get in the cities, because then it just crushes you. It's so hot.
Right. Gotcha. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you what, we're almost actually at the end of time here. So we're going to wrap it up unless you want, is there anything final you'd like to say regarding your work?
Not that I can think of.
Did we answer it all? That's good. Cat, what's your cat's name?
Oh, this is Jack, everyone. This is Jack.
Jack. Does Jack like geology too? Is he a geology cat?
I can imagine. He likes birds. He's a bird
Birds?
watcher.
All right. He's more of a sky cat than a underground cat.
Yeah.
All right. So to wrap it up, like we do every week, we go around and we talk about the one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise. So Natalie, you are our guest. The floor is yours.
Oh, tidal flooding or otherwise. Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I want to talk about what you do. You're a meteorologist, right?
Yes, I am.
So how did you get into that? That's so interesting. My husband wanted to be one a long time ago.
Really? Well, I'll tell you what. So, and that's why I asked you this question at the beginning. How long have you known you wanted to do it? Because, if you lined 10 meteorologists up in a row and said, how long have you been interested in weather for? 7 out of 10 would say since before middle school. It's very hard to just fall into it. I mean, by the time you're in high school and going to college, if you're going to college, like you pretty much are set that you want to do meteorology. And I think it's part because, I don't know, there's just a bug for a lot of people that grips you. But then there's also a reality of the situation that meteorology school is hard. I mean, 4 semesters of calculus, biology, physics, chemistry, engineering classes. It really is an engineering major, but of the atmosphere. So
now I think 7 out of 10, I don't know if that's accurate, Joe, because we've had many meteorologists on the show. It might be about 7, I don't know how many, but I think only one had said they decided to become a meteorologist like way later on. But everyone else, it was like before they were 10 years old, they were,
yeah, I mean,
a storm hit and they were like, okay, that is it. I want to do this forever.
No, I mean, you could be right. I think 7 out of 10 even could be low. I mean, I said before middle school, so maybe you were 12 or 13. The point is, a lot of people are interested in this for a very long time.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Anyway, Palma, off to you.
Just getting ready for summer. I'm hoping that after Memorial Day, things calm down a little bit because everyone has been very eager to get into their homes for Memorial Day and finish up their projects. So I'm looking forward to things settling down a little bit.
All right. And I'll end it with this. So I was in Ventnor 2 Saturdays ago, and they were selling seasonal beach badges, and they were $10 if you bought it before May 23rd or something like that. Now, I always knew, I live in Monmouth County, so I'm at the northern part of the shore.
Oh, okay.
But $10. I mean, there are towns in Monmouth County that charge you $12 for one day to go to the beach.
Wow.
So, it's a whole nother world. And I've known this for a while, but I'm just putting it out there. Once you get to LBI on South, the beach badges are super cheap. I mean, in Northern Ocean and Monmouth, I mean, $8 to $10 is like average, and seasonal badges over 100 are like pretty common. So
Wow.
you guys down there have it pretty good when it comes to beach access.
Well, I was a beach badge checker when I was in high school, and I don't think that the world would agree with you, Joe, because people were very upset to pay. I think it was $15 for the season at the time when I was doing it, but that was, of course, the after Memorial Day rate. And people were just very upset that they had to pay anything. So it's nice to hear that you feel differently. So
Well, after we go to the Ghost Forest, I'll take you to Avon, and I'll buy the beach badges. I mean, I don't want to make you guys pay for it, but you'll see that people actually pay for that much money, $12 a day. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
So that's our story. Anyway, great Tidal Flooding Talk. Thank you, Natalie, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We will be back with you next Tuesday. We have a special episode. We have the director of the National Hurricane Center, Michael Brennan, on to talk about hurricane season. But as always, we thank you for watching. We thank Natalie again for coming on and sharing her expertise. And we'll be back with you every Tuesday. Take care, everybody.